Good afternoon, everyone. It is Sunday, March the 7th, 2021. It is currently 4:09 p.m. Central Time, and you know where I'm at. I'm here at Victory Baptist Church. I'm here in the sanctuary of Victory Baptist Church. This evening at 6 p.m., we'll be live on the air under the VBC podcast, most likely the VBC podcast. It could be Theology Central. Who knows? We'll be live somewhere and we'll have people actually here. So another in-person service. So we have returned to a normal full schedule of in-person services. Hopefully I can just stop saying that. It's been so long. So every in-person service now seems like, wow, things are different. But yeah, so we're back to normal. So that is wonderful. But as usual, I'm here early this afternoon to try to produce as many live broadcasts as possible because I won't be able to come here tomorrow. And the reason why is tomorrow morning at 7:30, I have to be at the Toyota car dealership because my check engine light is on and my knowledge of cars is basically zero. So I'm going to take my car there for them to figure out why the check engine light is on. And then hopefully, whatever it is, hopefully it doesn't cost too much to repair. But that's what I'll be doing tomorrow, unfortunately, instead of being here talking about doctrine, theology, and what's happening in the world and what's going on within Christianity. And that's where we want to turn our attention right now. All right. Now, I've done one podcast episode kind of exploring this topic. It was kind of like a beginning point. And as always, whenever I throw out an episode, a lot of times I'm waiting to see what kind of discussion it generates. Because a lot of times I throw out things just to spark a conversation, to spark a discussion, and to try to see what different perspectives get thrown back at me. And sometimes if I don't get a lot of information back, I kind of perceive that sometimes as, well, nobody is interested. And then may move on to something else. But I think maybe I shouldn't have moved on, and I think maybe I should have stayed with it. And I guess we're gonna return back to the subject that I threw out in that previous episode. I don't even know how long ago it was. And we may have to do a number of episodes about this, all right? So let me try to explain. Throughout church history, Christians have had to deal with the fact that the Bible teaches a very specific morality when it comes to sexuality. The Bible is very specific about its view on sexuality, right? That sex is to only occur in marriage with your marriage partner. That's it. No sex before marriage, no sex with anyone other than your marriage partner. So the Bible condemns fornication. It condemns adultery. It condemns looking at a woman with lust. It is very specific about how sex is between a man and a woman in marriage, the end, period, done. That's the way it's supposed to work, all right? And as a result of that being the biblical teaching, well, Christianity also realized that human beings desire sex. That's just a reality. That is. And so how do you try to lead Christians to fulfilling the biblical model of sexuality when there's people who desire sex and the church has had to deal with sexual sin after sexual sin after sexual sin, whether it's premarital sex, adultery, pornography, you name it, the church has always tried to deal with it. And at times, the church will maybe really focus in on sexuality and sexual sin, and a kind of a movement will arise within the church saying, hey, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do. And we had the Why Wait campaign, or Why Wait? Love Waits campaign. Why Wait? Love Waits campaign. If you remember, that had big rallies, and then young people would sign like a contract that they pledged to wait until they were married to have sex. Was it called pledge rings? They did the pledge rings. And a lot of people referred to this as the purity culture that a lot of people kind of say was very big in the 1990s within evangelical Christian world. During that time, you had books coming out about, hey, stop dating. This whole dating thing is not working. It leads to sexual impurity. No dating. So you had to do some kind of courtship and there's all these ways you had to do it. And a lot of people who came out of all of that purity culture, a lot of people who went through that as Christian young people, they came out of it and their feelings about it are not very, they're not very positive. Many of them they feel like it damaged their view of sexuality. It hurt them. And just a lot of really, and a lot of times it's women who come out of it feeling like their feelings about themselves, about sexuality, about their purpose in life was viewed radically, like it altered maybe a healthy perspective that they should have. Maybe I'll put it this way, it hindered them from having a healthy perspective on sexuality. Let me state it this way. Christianity, this is, I think when it comes to sexuality, this is kind of a problem we have just not only in society, but just within the church. It seems this is the way when we discuss a healthy view of sexuality, it comes down to the mechanics of sexuality, right? The biology, the mechanics of sexuality, how it occurs, how it happens, right? How sex happens, and the morality. But we don't go into anything else about responsibility, about feelings, emotions. Like I think our perspectives, and I think a lot of people, their view of sexuality is really a lot of times shaped by who knows what really. You don't really get a lot of good instruction and teaching and discussions about it. Parents usually feel awkward in discussing it with their children, so they just go, okay, this is kind of here's kind of what you need to know. And if they're Christian parents, then they throw in a long list of morality about you can't do this, don't do this, you can't do this, you can't go here, you can't go there, don't do this. And it's a lot of don'ts. And then somehow the child is to emerge from all of that with a healthy understanding of sexuality, right? And a lot of times we find out as they get older that there's lots of problems with their view of sexuality, problems in marriages. Then those people have to go to counseling to try to help out with the problems they're having in their marriage. And you're like, what went so horribly wrong? But rarely does anyone want to stop and look at Christianity and go, I wonder, has Christianity greatly hurt people having a healthy understanding of sexuality, a healthy perspective of sexuality? Because again, it's either basically the biology mechanics of it or the morality of it. And they're really, everything in between is just kind of, well, we don't talk about that. We don't discuss that. And I know it's very difficult to do. Like, when do you talk about it? How do you have these conversations? When do you have these conversations? But clearly there's lots, look, to pretend. Look, the church can pretend all day, but the church is filled with all kinds of sexual immorality and problems and hang-ups and issues. And if we talk to counselors, it'd be interesting to know how many of their patients are professing Christians. And I wonder how much of their Christian upbringing or how much they feel Christianity negatively impacted it. So we have to do a lot of discussion about this. I think, and there's so many different paths we can go, but here's what I want to do. I have a clip. This clip's been all over the internet. I'm late to playing it for you, so you probably have already seen it, but I'm going to just play this for you. It's from a pastor. I believe he's in Missouri. Now he's kind of stepped down. I don't know. He was going to be in charge of something and he stepped down, and I don't know what he's doing because the backlash to this thing was severe. This backlash was crazy. But this pastor stood in front of a church preaching in regards to sexual sin, and basically, and this is very common within Christianity, that men are sexual, and if you want to, if you want to help your man not commit sexual sin, it's up to you, ladies. It's your responsibility to fix it. Your job to do something about it. You've got to do something about it. And so then it really begins to create this idea that, okay, women are just kind of viewed as a sexual object, and it's their responsibility to keep the men from sinning. All right. Now, again, we could go. There's so many issues we would have to unpack here. So many issues to unpack. But I want you to hear how he decided to go after this subject. This is a short clip. I may try to track down the full sermon at some point because, to be fair, this clip that went around is only I think it's about 2 minutes long. So that's really not fair. But he says enough here within these 2 minutes that's pretty shocking. But in some ways, it's not that shocking, because I think a lot of people within Christianity have heard this kind of preaching before. And we have to ask ourselves, what can we do to try to fix this? And what can we do to not – look, put it this way. Let me state it this way. Should we not learn from some of the mistakes possibly made during the rise of so-called purity culture in the 90s? Were there any lessons that we could learn? I mean, look, if we're not willing to look, we all make mistakes. Every generation of Christians make mistakes. A lot of times their attempt, their intent is good. They really have their intentions are really good, but maybe the way they went about trying to do so, maybe their intentions were really good, trying to ensure that we try to honor and glorify God and how we conduct ourselves sexually. That's good intentions, but maybe their attempts were misguided, wrong, and actually hurtful. Well, if that's the case, and you've got people now going, look, that purity culture greatly hurt me, should we not listen to those voices? Should we not listen to what, and maybe they were hurt just because they misunderstood. Look, I've preached messages and then people say, I remember when you said this, and I'll be like, wait, what? What did I say? And I'll go back and listen. I'm like, wait a minute, they completely got the wrong idea from that sermon. They completely didn't hear that right. So sometimes it's because the listener didn't hear correctly, but maybe we were not clear enough in our message. Right? So I just think this is something to consider. So I know I threw out a lot of ideas right there, but I'm just trying to get you thinking about this. So let's listen to this clip. It's pretty, yeah. Well, I'm not gonna give anything away. You probably already know where to go. It's 1 minute and 55 seconds long. Here we go. Let's listen to this. Now he's in his sermon. He's got a big screen behind him showing, memes and pictures, because I mean, that's so common in preaching now. You got to have those slides. You got to have those pictures. Can't just preach God's word. You got to have pictures. But okay. So, some of these images that he shows, I remember from the video, and I'll try to explain. Some of them I don't remember. So, well, hopefully this will all work out. Here we go.
And ladies, here's the thing you need to know about men. Don't give him a reason to be like this distracted boyfriend.
All right, ladies, don't give your boyfriends, don't give your men a reason to be like this distracted boyfriend. Now, this is the famous meme that went all over the internet where you have a guy and a girl, they're walking one direction, and then the boyfriend, he's turned his head to look back at a girl walking in the opposite direction because he obviously thinks she's hot. And so he's saying, hey, don't give your boyfriend, don't give your man a reason to be like that distracted boyfriend. In other words, whose responsibility is it? It's the woman's responsibility. It's her job. It's not the man's responsibility. It's the woman's responsibility. All right. Now, this is problematic, and this has been a part of the Christian kind of culture for a long time. Look, it's the women's job. And if the men do look like that distracted boyfriend looking at that other woman walking the other direction, it's the woman's fault. It's the woman's fault. It's not the man's fault. It's the woman's fault. All right? And so this seems to imply that if the woman does everything right, then the man will never be distracted or look at another woman or have any problems. And I look, there have been men who have been married to women that have been considered, some of the most beautiful women in the world, and we find out that those men had an affair. So the woman didn't look right? No, I think there's the idea that there is desire and lust in the hearts of human beings. People desire sex, and sometimes that desire doesn't matter. It's a personal thing. It's inside that person, and they're going to have to deal with it, and it doesn't matter. Now, we could get into some scripture that says how the marriage should work, a Christian marriage should work, and there should be mutual satisfaction, trying to help preserve that neither party is tempted. It's not just the man, it's both parties are to be satisfied so that neither are tempted. So we could get into a discussion there. Sometimes the mutual aspect of that is forgotten. It's just like, hey, woman, it's your job. It's your job. Now, maybe in the sermon, he talked about the men's responsibilities. To be fair, this is a 1 minute and 55 second clip. So maybe he did speak of the men's, he's already spoken about the men's responsibility. Now he's speaking about the women's responsibility. All right. And now you could argue that, is that still fair to put this on the woman? Maybe, maybe not. We could have a long discussion about that. Clearly, I think the way this is being presented, but I don't have the full context. But this is, I think we have to start always first and foremost with each each person, male or female, they are responsible for themselves. We can't put the blame on someone else. We can't. Well, we can't put the blame on someone else. It can be like, hey, it'd be a young person, a teenager going, well, mom and dad, if you did things the way you were supposed to do so, I wouldn't be so rebellious. It's your responsibility to do things right, so I wouldn't be rebellious. We can always put the blame on someone else for our sin. It's always easy to do so, but we ultimately are responsible for our own sin. We sin, we're responsible for it. And look, there can be a million circumstances. There can be a million circumstances that either you feel contributed to it, led to it, but the bottom line, you're still responsible for it. All right? The Bible doesn't say, hey, you can commit sin if the following circumstances are present. It doesn't allow that. So this is already kind of starting in a bad way. I'm going to back this up right to the beginning again. Here we go.
And ladies, here's the thing you need to know about men. Don't give him a reason to be like this distracted boyfriend. You hear me? Don't give him a reason to be looking around. Hello? So, okay. Why is it so many times that women, after they get married, let themselves go?
Now, why is it that so many times after marriage, a woman lets herself go? Wow. Number one, if you see the video of this, sir, you're not in tip-top physical shape by any means. The man is clearly overweight. No question about it. All right. So that's number one. So I don't know why he would pick. I don't know how he could say this with a straight face. Why is it after marriage so many women let themselves go? And why is it after marriage so many men let themselves go? All right. So it goes both directions. Number two, women have a tendency after marriage to have children, which can have absolute profound impact on their bodies. Can make things very difficult. So you have to be willing to accept there's going to be a change there. All right? That's the way that kind of works, right? Also, after marriage, you start getting older, and as you get older, your body changes, and you can find your metabolism changing and finding it much more difficult to put off weight than you did when you were 17, eating 3 bags of Doritos and a burrito, right? Okay, right? I mean, things change. So let's keep that in perspective. But again, maybe in the sermon he focused on the men, but man, he's really going after the women right here. All right, so why is it after marriage so many? And so get the implication. Women let themselves go because they let themselves go. What do they expect? What do they expect? What do you expect? What do you expect from your husband? So it's putting the blame on the woman. All right, let's continue here.
Why is it? Why do they do that? Now look, I'm not saying every woman can be the epic trophy wife of all time, like Melania Trump. I'm not.
All right, so he's not saying that every woman can be the ultimate trophy wife like Melania Trump, and then he puts a picture on the screen of Melania Trump. I won't say that it was a completely immodest picture, but okay, all right. But I guess in his mind, that's the ultimate trophy wife is Melania Trump, I guess. I'm assuming he's a Trump supporter, I guess. I don't know. Didn't Melania Trump, wasn't she a model, and didn't she appear in Playboy? I could be wrong. I think she did. Not all women can be that way. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And not all men could be, and you just named the men that were named sexiest men in the world. I think Blake Shelton was named that one time. Adam Levine from, I think he was, I don't know which men, I don't keep up with that, but, and most men can't be that either. So it goes both ways, but all right, let's see where he goes.
Not saying that at all. Most women can't be trophy wives, but you know, like her, maybe a participation trophy. I don't know, but all I can say is not everybody looks like that. Amen. Not everybody looks like that. But you don't need to look like a butch either. But you say, how can I do that? Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. I'm so glad you asked that question, because you're in my office, you and your husband, and we're talking about your marriage, and you've asked me this question about what can I do about that. All right, if you were sitting in my office, here's the first thing I'd say to you, and boy, I hate to say that, this is why I don't do marital counseling anymore, and that is weight control. So how important is this? Let me tell you something. I have a friend. He has put a divorce weight on his wife. That's how important this is. You know, makeup. Makeup is a good thing. You know, one little boy said to the other boy, why do girls wear makeup and perfume? He said, because they're ugly and they stink. You don't want to be ugly and stink. Scientists have discovered, by the way, a food that diminishes a woman's sex drive. It's called wedding cake. Yeah.
Now, there you have it. Now, obviously, the backlash. Now, again, to be fair, that was bad enough. But to be fair, we didn't get any context. But he's clearly demonstrating a very common ideology that kind of shows up within the Christian ethic on sexuality, and that is putting a lot of the responsibility on the woman, putting a lot of the responsibility on the woman. And let's be fair, the people preaching these sermons tend to be obviously men. But maybe men need to listen to women and understand their perspective on things as well. All right, I've stated it. I strongly believe that there is a natural built-in danger that occurs in marriage, all right? And here's what happens. This is not a hard set rule for every human being, but there is an aspect where this is true, okay? This has been talked about before. It's not perfect, but it's at least something to consider, all right? I've stated it in my preaching and teaching in the past as well. Here's a dynamic that occurs. In the dating phase, right? In the dating phase, guys tend to use a lot of romance, emotion, feelings in order to try to get sex, right? They will try to say the right things, be romantic, flowers, gifts, try to do a lot of those things in order to try to get the physical relationship. That's what they're sadly to say, in many cases, that's the end goal. Now, listen, women can have just as strong a desire as men. I'm just saying that there's some truth to this. And women, in many cases, during that same phase, will use their sexuality, femininity, in order to try to get a relationship. That the woman, in many cases, wants something deeper than just the physical. Not always. To say always would be foolish. That's just to say that would be ridiculous. But in many cases, this occurs. The woman is very much more sensual in that phase in order trying to get the relationship. The man is far more romantic and more in tune with feelings and emotions in order to try to get the physical. And then marriage occurs. Well, now the woman has the relationship, and the man believes, well, now that we're married, then I get exactly what I want. And then so in many cases, she may stop being as sensual. He'll stop being as emotional or romantic. And then both feel, wait a minute, deprived of what they wanted or what they hoped they were going to gain out of marriage. Some people go in, what they want out of marriage maybe sometimes is very different than maybe what they state they want out of marriage. So sometimes you're like, wait, what are you really trying to get out of marriage? If you're trying to just get a consistent physical partner so that you can fulfill that physical desire, and that's all you want, and you think now you're going to get, well, you could possibly things not go the way you want them to. So I think sometimes there is a difference in maybe the way two people approach it, and then they get married, and then things can change dramatically. One feels like, hey, I've got what I thought I was going to get. I was thinking, I got what I thought I was going to get. And so now, in many cases, some of those same things that they were doing, they stopped doing. And another part of it is, let's just be honest, the dating phase is very different than the marriage phase, right? I mean, when I say that, I'm not saying it immediately transitions in 24 seconds. I'm saying when you're dating versus 5 years into marriage, it's very different because now there's some familiarity. You get used to one another. There's security in that. There's a lot of positives in that, but some of those same initial feelings can't last. They are temporary. They don't last. And so this can create problems. But what he seems to be saying is, hey, women, it's your responsibility. And what you have to do is lose weight. You have to lose weight. Weight control. That's what you have to do. While he's standing there clearly overweight. The man doesn't. So this reduces the woman, now this is very dangerous, to basically a physical object whose purpose in life is to ultimately serve the desire of the man. That reduces the woman from being less than a person. As I've referred to it before, is sometimes the Christian ethic reduces the woman to simply the fix for the man's addiction to needing physical relations. A man may have, and again, some cases the woman can have a far stronger desire than the man. All right, so this is not always the way it works, but sometimes within Christianity, it's usually, a lot of times it's perceived that the man has the strongest physical desire than the woman, and it's the woman's job to take care of that. And if she doesn't, well, then she can't blame the husband for, finding his Hagar. All right, he can't blame him. Can't blame him. Now, yes, when you are in a marriage and things are not going right physically, there is obviously going to be room for temptation. Look, this goes both ways. Let's go with a traditional view. Like the traditional view typically says the women desire emotional connection more than physical. Now, that's not always the case, and anyone who says that is just ridiculous because it's not always the case. But let's just go with that more traditional view. Well, if the man is not providing her emotional needs, she's just as tempted to go fulfill those emotional needs somewhere else. It may not be a sexual adultery. It could be emotional adultery. But the same thing can happen with the man. If his emotional needs are not being met, he could go find those emotional needs being met somewhere else, and he commits emotional adultery. So it can go both ways. So there's an emotional aspect. If you're not fulfilling that, you're putting the other person at risk. And yes, if the physical part's not being met, yes, you're putting people at risk to try to fulfill that physical desire somewhere else. So we always have to be aware that the other person, the man or the woman, could be being placed in a position where they're very vulnerable to temptation and to violating their marriage covenant. That's the way it works. Whether it's another person, whether it's pornography, whatever it may be, they may seek whatever they're not getting in their marriage, fulfillment from somewhere else. Now, look. You can't blame the other person. It's still your fault. You're responsible. It's still your responsible. Think of it this way. Forget marriage for a second. If you're single, you have no one there to fulfill that physical desire. So does that give you an excuse to sin? The obvious answer we would say is no. Well, if you get married and things are not going right in that area, does that give you grounds to sin? No, it doesn't. All right. Now, yes, you want to fix the problem. Yes, you want to do everything you can to try to protect the other person. Yes, you want to be looking out for one another and helping one another. Hopefully, you're both trying to help each other. Hopefully, you're talking about it. You're working together. You're struggling through it, whatever the case may be. Hopefully, but just because it falls apart for whatever reason doesn't mean that you can just make an excuse. Well, she put on weight, so I've got an excuse. No, there's no excuse. Just like if you were single. If your wife or husband passed away, that doesn't mean now they passed away, so now I don't have to fulfill. I can engage in physical relations with whomever I want. Well, now you would be committing sex outside of marriage. It wouldn't be adultery because your spouse passed away, but you still would have to wait until you were married, right? That's the way it works. So I just think sometimes I think the intentions are good, trying to help. Hey, let's do everything we can to protect these marriages from adultery and pornography, and let's do what we can to try to help. But sometimes we create a situation where I think we're doing great damage. We treat the woman like she's not even a person. She's not even a person. She's an object with a purpose of fulfilling the desire of the man, and that's not biblical. The biblical model seems to be the man is there for the woman and the woman is there for the man. Neither one of them neither one of them is supposed to, in other words, neither one of them really own their own body in the sense that I am there to provide for the other person. The other person is to provide for that. It's a mutual thing. It's not a one-sided thing. It's not a one-sided thing, whether it's emotions, whether it's physical contact, whatever it may be. Both persons are there to serve the other. That's the biblical model. The biblical model is that in marriage, we sacrifice self to serve the other in a lot of different ways. And I think the Christian culture is kind of like, I think in a way, and I know this wasn't the intention, but I think in many ways, the Christian culture, the Christian sexual ethic, in many cases has reduced the woman to simply a physical object. I think, women are dangerous. Women are dangerous. Stay away. Be careful. Be careful. Women are dangerous. Women are dangerous because we can only see them as a physical object. We can't see them as a person, as a human being. Now, are there dangers? Yes, there's dangers. Obviously, there's danger. So we can't deny the danger. See, that's the weird world that we have to try to walk as Christians. We're supposed to view other people as human beings, a brother or sister in the Lord, a human being, and not just as an object, just not as a physical object that is a source of either temptation or pleasure. Like we've got to get beyond just seeing them, that danger, because all I can see that person is for what they could possibly provide me physically. That's wrong. Right? We don't want to see them that way, but at the same time, we can't deny possible danger. So I think sometimes people who come out of Christianity and they're very upset about purity culture, or they're very upset about how Christianity handled sexuality. I think sometimes they fail to appreciate the very fine line Christianity has to walk. Right? And here's the thing, Christianity tries to walk this fine line, and we all know what happens. The minute Christians commit a sexual sin, the whole world's like, see, hypocrite. And then the minute we try to come with very strong standards, they're like, you people are insane. You people are crazy. What is wrong with you people? You can't seem to go 3 seconds without thinking about sex. You've all got problems. So if we try to impose strict standards, we're messed up. If we commit sexual sin, we're messed up. So from the world's perspective, they're always, no matter what we do, we're going to be viewed as crazy. But from the Christian perspective, we've got to walk a fine line. And I can't speak for the female, but I can speak from a guy. Christian men have got to get beyond the perspective of just seeing a woman as a physical object that's either a source of temptation or they're going to be the source of pleasure. We got to see them beyond that. Right? I mean, I think we all have that problem. And many men have strong desires and strong sexual issues that they deal with. And we have to be open and able to talk about it as well. We can't put a taboo on it that, we just got to come out in the open and go, men struggle. And nobody should be shocked by that because they do. They're human beings. And women have their own struggles. Sometimes Christianity just seems to think that women never have a desire. They have none. They have no problems. Women have struggles too. There's been just as many Christian women who've been involved in an affair. Well, I can't give statistics, but put it this way. Every affair takes two people. All right. Sometimes it's forgotten. There's like Christian, sometimes men always have an affair, and they had an affair with themselves. There's always another party there, right? It takes two. And if the man is responsible, the woman has to be responsible too, correct? I mean, it can't just go like just the man's the only one. The woman has a responsibility too. But the man can't blame the woman. And the woman can't always just put the blame on the man. Takes two, right? So we have to have a fine line here. That I know Christian pastors, when they deal with sexuality, they try to come up with a way to try to protect people. But I think sometimes we bypass some of these deeper issues. And that we reduce everything to simply the mechanics or the morality. And there's a lot going on there. like sometimes it's referred to as the Billy Graham rule about never being alone with a female. And the world, women, especially in the work world, if a man has that policy at work that I'm not gonna be alone with a woman, many women feel like that's sexist and that's not fair because that could possibly limit their chances for advancement or being involved in important meetings, or because that the men, if they can be in meetings with other men alone or go out to lunch with them, that they can build work relationships and that can help them, progress in their career, and that if women are kept from men because I can't be alone with a woman, that could greatly hinder their career, and that has to be taken into consideration. Because the woman, the way the woman sees that rule, like you can say that rule and it sounds really good. Hey, I'm never going to be alone with a woman other than my wife, and everybody's like, amen, that sounds so good. From the woman's perspective, is like, hey, why don't you able to control yourself and see me as a human being, and I'm a work colleague, and don't view me as an object of danger because you can't control yourself. From the woman's perspective, it's like, hey, guy, get over yourself. What's your problem? Like you view me like I'm, like you're an alcoholic and I'm a bottle of Jack Daniels. And you can't be around it. You can't go into the bar because you're an alcoholic. And they're like, well, wait, you learn to control yourself, learn to see me as a human being. So from the woman's perspective, wait, you've got this rule because you treat me, you see me as danger. You see me as danger. And from the woman's perspective, that's not fair. And the world has criticized that rule greatly. They're like, that's not fair. The woman should be treated just like any other coworker. And if you are going to be alone with men in a meeting or meet with them or go here or go there, you got to do the same thing with the women coworkers. Then we get all the accusations of something happening in the workplace, and then everybody's like, well, wait a minute. And then the men are like, see, I can't be alone with a woman. Is it you can't be alone with a woman because you can't control yourself? Or are you claiming that the accusations are false? And then it just becomes controversial. From a Christian perspective, how do we work that? How do we do that? And how do we maintain standards that don't reduce, and again, I got to say from a man's perspective, that we don't reduce the woman to simply a object of danger or an object of pleasure. I think we reduce the woman to being less than a person created in the image of God. I think we've put so much of the responsibility on the woman. The woman, you have to dress this way. You can't do this. You can't do. It's all about what the woman does because the men seem to be just animals running around who cannot control themselves. That if we even look for a second, that's it. We've already committed sin. And I understand the Bible says if you look at a woman with lust, you've already committed sin. So the men are like, women, you've got a responsibility to help me out here. But what's our responsibility? I'm just saying the Christian worldview throws in a lot of wrinkles here. And I think when Christians address it, we sometimes don't take all the layers. We're not very nuanced. We just seem to be it's almost like it's a either or, like we almost come in with like a baseball bat and just start smashing things. So this is the way it's got to work to protect everyone. And sometimes it seems like the only one we want to protect are the men, and not the women. And then women grow up in a Christian, I think coming out of a Christianity. I don't know how young girls grow up and feel. I think they just feel like, oh, I've got to cover myself, and I've got, it's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault. It's kind of like the idea of a woman being sexually assaulted. And the first question is, what were you wearing? Wait, what? That is horrific. She's the victim. You don't blame the victim. You don't blame the victim. So I think it goes both ways. And I think we got to be fair here. Okay. I think we got to be fair here. And see, this is the nuances, right? If a woman contacts you at midnight and wanting to have an improper chat, that woman has to bear that responsibility too. Right? I mean, you can't get around that. The woman has to bear that responsibility. But at the same time, the man has to bear that responsibility. Right? In other words, the man can't say, well, she did this, so it's not my fault. No, it's your fault. And it is her fault. So there's got to be equal blame, right? There's got to be equal blame, but at the same time, the guy can't say, well, look at the way she dressed. That's why I had an affair. No, that can't be you can't do that either, because then the woman has to feel like that she's, no matter what she does, she's causing everyone, that she's the source of sin for every guy because of the way she looks or the way she does this or the way she does that. That's not fair either. See, there's a lot of nuances here. That's what I'm trying to get to. There's a lot of ways to look at this. And again, I think this is where a woman's perspective is very critical here, because men's perspective can be very, very one-sided, which you can understand. You can understand, right? I mean, from a guy perspective, I can understand it. There's the scripture. If I look at a woman with lust, I've committed adultery in my heart. Okay, well, that's I don't want to do that. All right. So then you understand then why, as men preachers, then they put the responsibility on the woman. Right. But what about the responsibility of the man? And what about how do we address that without making the woman feel like all she is an object to be feared or an object to be desired? Like that stops them from being a person. It's really nuanced, and I who knows, if you're a Christian parent, you can probably, who knows, you've probably given maybe your Christian son the wrong idea about women. Maybe you've given your Christian daughter the wrong idea about men. I mean, maybe from a woman's perspective, all men are predators, and at any second they're going to pounce, and you got to beware and scared of them all the time. Like is that healthy? Like, how do we address all of these issues in a more thoughtful way? I know that I've gone a long time just trying to address all of this. How long have we gone? 41 minutes trying to review a 2-minute clip, but it just brings up all of these issues. So I guess what I wanted to do is just throw out a lot of ideas. That's what I wanted to do. I accomplished that. I threw out a lot of ideas. I don't know if any of those ideas were super helpful, but hopefully it gets you thinking about it. Look, if I go through my whole Christian life and the different ways I was taught, I can't say that all the things that were taught were super helpful and I hate to say that some of them may have actually been hurtful and harmful. Now, I can't put any blame on anybody else, but I mean, I think the average person's view of sexuality, I just don't know how healthy anybody's view on sexuality actually is, because where did you get it from? What structured your view of sexuality? Where did you get your view from? From that, you got the talk. Mom and dad gave you that one talk. Boom. Or you got it from your friends, or you got it from some other form of media, or sadly, maybe pornography, wherever you may have got maybe your views. And then the church comes along and tries to give you a Christian view, but I don't know if it's if the Christian view just seems to like, here's the bad, don't do the bad, don't do the bad, don't do the bad. And then sometimes when Christianity tries to be cool and hip to say, okay, how to have your best physical relations now kind of Christian sermon, which there's a lot of those, sometimes it comes across as like, oh, that's just cringeworthy and that's not helpful. And I just think you have a lot of people out there with a lot of issues. And I think Christianity has not always contributed to a solution or really helped with a solution. And when you get a sermon telling basically Christian women, hey, you can't all be Melania Trump, but you can lose some weight. Can't be Melania Trump and lose the weight. And if you don't lose the weight, hey, don't get upset. Your husband gets distracted and looks at another woman. Hey, come on now. Come on now. Okay, maybe we need to think that through a little better. Now, again, that's only 2 minutes, so I can't say if his full sermon offered a fuller perspective. There's a local church. I got to find it. A local church not far from my house had a sermon dealing with, again, the Christian kind of idea of sexuality. And I've heard a lot of people say, man, that thing's messed up. And I don't know if it's messed up or not. I think the world sees it, and the world, I mean, a lot of things have changed, obviously. And I think that when Christians speak in regards to sexuality of any kind, it doesn't matter what we talk about. From the world's perspective, we sound like we don't get it. Like we just sound all messed up. But then there are many people who've come out of the Christian world who are like, you messed me up. You hurt me. You did great damage to me. You did great damage to me as a person, to my future physical relations with my husband or my wife. We have to stop and go, wow, what happened? What happened in their Christian life that caused that much pain and damage? We've got to at least take it serious. And I think that we need to have a deeper discussion. And I think we have to look to our own selves and just be honest with ourselves and our own struggles. I just wish Christianity was a place where there could be more open discussions about those issues without feeling shame, without feeling guilt. It's just like you can't have any. It's like there's a very straight line, and you've got to be very careful, because if any deviation and any struggles within sexuality is viewed as the crime of the century, and when there's that much shame attached to it, then nobody can be open and honest. And if you can't be open and honest, there's no hope for reconciliation, restoration, improvement, maturity. It's something to consider. So you can give me all of your complaints at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. I know this is kind of stream of consciousness. I apologize. It's just, well, it was on purpose. Actually, it was on purpose. Okay, so I don't apologize. I'm apologizing, but I'm not apologizing. I wanted it to be that way. I wanted it to feel like me just sitting here going, okay, let's just try to show you all of the complexity of trying to discuss sexuality from a Christian perspective and just throwing out all kinds of ideas. I wanted it to be that way because I want you to go, well, wait, okay, well, yeah, okay, oh, well, yeah, okay, well, I want you going back and forth, and I want you, all of your thoughts about it, because that's the only way, hopefully, that people can, we can improve and get better and be healthier in that area of our lives. And not just that. Let's think of it this way. Not just being healthier, being in a position to better glorify God in that area of our lives. I think sometimes like the only way I can glorify God in that area of my life is not sin. Okay. Like that's the only, can we glorify God in other ways than just not sinning? And can we come up with better ways in trying to protect people from sinning in a way that doesn't hurt other people? Like I can't come up with a way to protect me from not sinning, but it literally dehumanizes and hurts someone, the sisters in Christ. I can't say I've got to be protected, so I'm going to dehumanize you and not treat you as a human being. That can't be the solution either. All right, I'll stop right there. Everyone have a great day. God bless.